Good morning. We're back. Okay. We're going to be looking at Psalm 36 this morning. And in this psalm, what we're going to see is a sharp contrast between the way of the wicked and the way of the righteous, and how they view righteousness, how they view God, and the result of those things as well. And this is not uncommon to the Psalms. It's one of the major themes of the Psalms, is a contrast of the way of the righteous and the way of the wicked. Beginning, of course, with Psalm 1 being kind of the capstone of that, and the major psalm that deals with that idea. So we see it throughout the Psalms. We've seen it throughout these first 36 Psalms of David contrasting his way with the way of the wicked and the results thereof. And we're going to see it in Psalm 36. And I want to take special note of verse 9 when we get to it and make a couple comments on verse 9. So verse 36, or Psalm 36, verse 1, transgression speaks to the wicked deep in his heart. There is no fear of God before his eyes. For he flatters himself in his own eyes, that his iniquity cannot be found out and hated. So that's key. There is no fear of God before his eyes, meaning he is not calling out to the Lord to direct his steps. He is not allowing God's words to guide his life. He is not, when he makes a decision in his life, he is not taking into consideration what the Lord would say about this decision. So if he's not living his life in God's eyes, whose eyes is he living his life in? Verse 2, he's living his life in his own eyes, for he flatters himself in his own eyes, that his iniquity cannot be found out and hated. The words of his mouth are trouble and deceit. He has ceased to act wisely and do good. He plots trouble while on his bed. He sets himself in a way that is not good. He does not reject evil. So that's the way of the wicked. And we're going to come back to that, to how he ends at the last verse or two. So we're going to come back to him in a second. Verse 5, your steadfast love, O Lord, extends to the heavens. So David is personifying the way of the righteous. This is what he says. This is what the righteous person says. Your steadfast love, Lord, extends to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds. Your righteousness is like the mountains of God. Your judgments are like the great deep. Man and beast you save, O Lord. How precious. So he recognizes the existence of the steadfast love and faithfulness of the Lord, and then he recognizes how important it is. How precious is your steadfast love, O Lord. The children of mankind take refuge in the shadow of your wings. They feast on the abundance of your house, and you give them drink from the river of your delights. Now, you're supposed to contrast 1b with verse 9. For with you is the fountain of life. In your light do we see light. In your light do we see light. The wicked have no fear of the Lord before their eyes. They live according to how their eyes see things. The righteous see light in the light of God. That's important. We're going to make a couple comments on that. So if we were to try to think about how to practically apply this to our lives, so often I think Christians try to always keep the things of God in their focus, right? So, the question might come up, what is better for me? Should I read my scriptures, or should I, do this other thing? And I think a lot of the times we think that the more Christian thing to do is to be reading the scriptures, and while that is significantly important, I think that comparative way to view life is not actually the biblical way to view life. Okay, so C.S. Lewis has this illustration in one of his books. I believe it's in God in the Dock. I think it is. I can't remember exactly where it's at. But he uses this illustration of, there was one time he was in a dark shed, and there was a hole in the ceiling, and there's a beam of light coming in through the hole, okay? And he says, so often Christians view the Christian life as a life that is supposed to fix their gaze on the beam and not let anything come in between their gaze with the beam. So you don't want to take your eyes off the beam. You want to always have your eyes seeing the beam of light coming in. And he said, that's not a helpful way view the Christian life. Instead, the way that you should view the Christian life is you should center yourself under the beam and then view everything in the light of the beam. Okay, and he said that he stepped underneath the beam and looked in the funnel of the beam, and he could look out and he could see trees and he could see the sky and he could see the clouds. And he said that is the more helpful way to view the Christian life. So it's not so much, okay, what is the Christian thing to do and what is the religious thing to do and what is the secular thing to do. More so the way Christians ought to live their life is, okay, how does a Christian cook a meal? How does a Christian go to work out? How does a Christian go shopping? So it's not, there are sacred things and there are secular things. Everything is sacred, and that is how the Christian ought to view life, okay? Inside the beam of light. So everything in this world is holy because God has made it holy. And it's up to the Christian then to walk in these things in the ways that God has called us to walk in them. So, if I were to ask you what's more holy, reading your Bible or playing a game, a lot of us would be tempted to say, well, reading the Bible is more holy. And I think that is an incorrect way to view things, right? God has made all things holy, right? And he has called us to view all things as holy. Now, one of those things is required in the scriptures, which is, we need to be reading our scriptures. So there is that category. But I don't think it's helpful to view things as an either or way of viewing things. I think Christians ought to say, whatever we're doing, we ought to do it to the glory of God. And I think that theology can be brought out of Psalm 36, verse 9 here. For with you is the fountain of life, and in your light do we see light. So when we have God's glasses on, when we have God's spectacles on, everything that we see, everything that we do can be done unto his glory. So that is an important worldview that I think we need to be continuously working on. And a great book on that is a book called The Things of Earth by Joe Rigney. Or the precursor to that book is a book called Desiring God by John Piper. And you've no doubt heard Pastor Ben and I quote from Desiring God before. We did a class on the things of earth a while back, but it's a book that can help just kind of establish these ideas in our minds. Not so much the comparative worldview, but more the introspective, or the seeing everything as holy from God and walking in it appropriately. So we could talk a lot about that, but we need to finish this psalm. Verse 10, oh, continue. Okay, so that's the contrast between the way of the wicked and the way of the righteous. The way of the wicked does not fear the Lord, does not have the fear of the Lord in his eyes. The way of the righteous sees everything with the fear of the Lord. He sees everything inside the holiness of God. Verse 10, and the result of that, verse 10, oh, continue your steadfast love to those who know you, and your righteousness to the upright of heart. Let not the foot of arrogance come upon me, nor the hand of the wicked drive me away. See, he's asking God to keep him in this. Right? He wants God to persevere him, to keep him in these things. Why? Verse 12, the end of the wicked. There the evildoers lie fallen. They are thrust down, unable to rise. So, major theme in the Psalms is a contrast between the way of the wicked and the way of the righteous. The major difference between the way of the wicked and the way of the righteous is that the way of the wicked is one that lives life with their own eyes, and the way of the righteous lives life with God's eyes. In all things, not just in the things that we think are more religious or more sacred, in all things, in eating a meal, in doing yard work, in all things, we see the holiness of God, and we do them with God's glory in mind and as our main motivation. So, wonderful psalm, just an incredible psalm that realigns our worldview, keeps us in the path of faith, something that we need every single day. So, I'm happy to be looking at this with you this morning. That will do it for our Psalm studies this week. Next week, we'll be back on Monday morning with Psalm 37, and then on Wednesday, we'll look at Psalm 38. So happy to be closely moving. So Psalm 42, I believe it is. Let me check. Psalm 42, or Psalm 41 is the end of the first book of the Psalms. So you know that there's 5 books of the Psalms. that have divisions, and then they somewhat change themes after that. And more writers start to write more Psalms. David writes the majority of the first book, which is 1 through 41. And so we're going to move into that second book, I think, Lord willing. And we're close to getting there. So looking forward to that. Hope you guys are having a good week. And we'll be with you guys on Sunday. I'll be preaching, and we will have both services like we've been doing. But looking forward to that, and looking forward to being with you all this Sunday. And hope you guys have a good rest of the week. And those of you who are at Gitche, we miss you. I hope you have a good time and are enjoying the wonderful weather up there and the wonderful time. And I think one of the most beautiful places in the world. So I hope you guys have a good rest of the week and a good day. And we'll see you guys later.